from Found Family by Essay of Thoughts, read by just some fangirl. 1. Why are we looking at this place again? Sam asks, looking at the images projected behind Steve. We've scanned this base 3 times already. They've got no defenses that can take us, and they don't have more than 40, maybe 50 people in there. You don't need all our firepower for it, Rhodey adds. I agree with Wilson and Rhodes, Captain, Vision says. This does seem like overkill. We scanned it with Bruce's gamma algorithms the other day, Natasha says. The twins share a glance, as do the 2 pilots. What? They all say in collective unison. What I believe Agent Romanov means, Vision says slowly, is that the place contains tesseract or specter-like energy. Natasha nods. Beside her, the captain watches the twins closely. We think, he says, and his eyes are fixed on them, speaking directly to them. That whatever they did to you, they managed to find a way to do it to someone else. 2. What did they do to you? Sam asks as the Quinjet flies out. He waves a hand slightly, even as he's pulling on his gloves. If you're okay talking about it, that is. Many things, Wanda says. They had us get to the peak of health before they would run the experiments, and she trails off. There were many experiments, Petro says. They started with quizzes to test intelligence and reflexes, and then more practical things, and then viruses, Wanda says, with Chitauri blood and charged by the scepter, channeling energy from the scepter into our veins or our nerves. They had crystals, blue ones, and with some kind of metal. They charged them with the scepter, then crumbled them into Chitauri blood and treated it with the radiation of the scepter. She closes her eyes, but they can see the red light moving under her lids. It was that which did anything. Her eyes open, red light plays in her hand. It is how we became as we are. Sam nods. So, if they kept samples of that stuff, they could try giving it to more people? If Strucker lived, Wanda says. I would scan his mind to tell you how much they might have made. She shrugs, the new scarlet coat of her uniform shifting over her shoulders. But he does not, so I cannot. 3. They're almost at the base when Vision says, I have found record of items Strucker had shipped to other bases. There is a pause as everyone stares at him and the lenses in his eyes set and reset to look at them all in turn. It was in some of Ultron's files. It took me time to undo his encryption and destroy his viruses. Wanda's hand is wrapped tightly around Pietro's, his free hand light on her arm. Does it have the vials? Wanda asks. Vision's gaze is, as ever, gentle as it falls on Wanda. There were 12, he says softly, and they were sent here. 4. Vision, the captain starts as soon as they arrive. I am already hacking their protocols, sir, he says, and Wanda can see it in the shifting of his mind, the green and burgundy neurons tucking away behind the vast databanks of computing, letting him into the base's files. You don't need to, Wanda says. If there is someone who has been experimented on, Pietro and I will find them. They do not wait to hear the captain's words before she is in Pietro's arms and hurtling around the base. 5. The others are in the base by the time Wanda is certain she has pinpointed the mind. Pietro halts, sets her down to get her bearings, and sprints off to take down a perimeter guard the others missed. Wanda presses her fingers to the earpiece in her ear. There is one mind, she says, deep within. It has memories of the virus. There's a sigh of relief down the comlink. Good to know, Steve says. Can you get them out? Wanda nods, tugs on her bond to Pietro. We can do it. 6. There is a girl in the cell. Wanda thinks she might be little more than 10 years old. She wears robes like what she and Pietro had worn when their powers had first emerged, and now she is closer. She can see how her mind is disoriented, unable to fix its bearings. Pietro, she murmurs and glances down the corridor, where the guards they sprinted past are steering. Pietro rocks back on his heel and vanishes down the corridor in a split of silver. The guards stay down. Wanda Scarlet undoes the lock, and the girl in the corner flinches at the sound. Her hair is, Wanda notices, tinted with green, just as Pietro's began to bleach oddly after the experiments. She brushes Scarlet over the girl's mind, tries to see if they share any languages. English crops up, but is poor. And then French, which is fluent. And Wanda knows very little of, and then German, which Wanda has, if not as quite well as the girl seems to. Wanda casts her mind back, tries to remember how to separate German out from the hybrid dialect of Austrian German and Serbian that makes up much of the Sokovian language. Kind? She asks, voice soft. My name is Wanda. Ich bin. She casts her mind back, tries to claw the words out of the recesses of her mind. Ich bin hier zu helfen. I am here to help. The girl looks up and Wanda sees green eyes in a grimy face before the girl glances back down. We are with the Avengers, she says, still in German, and kneels beside the girl. My brother and I, we will get you out. The girl flinches again, and Wanda chews the inside of her cheek. Ich kann, she tries, but she cannot recall the word for telepath. She does not think she ever learned it. Wanda sighs. Was ich den Name? Is den Name? She tries instead, and then almost drags a hand down her face when she realizes. That was informal, Pietro's mind tells her, tone almost teasing. She can feel him sprinting back to them. The formal is different. I think it was wrong in general too, but my German is worse than yours. Lorna, the girl says all the same. My name is Lorna. Lorna tries to keep things as simple as possible. Ich bin Wanda. Mein Bruder is Pietro. Wir sind hier zu helfen. The girl looks at Wanda, something piercingly focused in her gaze. May I help you? Wanda asks, still in German. She thinks she's mixed up the formal and informal again, but Lorna seems to understand and nods. Scarlet spirals out of Wanda's fingers, laces through Lorna's soft gray-green mind, and gives it a solid bearing. There, Wanda says. Does that help? Lorna looks at her warily, but nods. Wanda smiles gently, but Lorna still flinches when Pietro comes to a halt in the doorway. Stay back, Wanda says in Sokovian. You will scare her. Pietro steps inside the cell instead, leaves the door open and stands in the corner. She is tiny, he says, and sounds almost disbelieving. Hydra are monsters, Wanda replies and tries to soothe Lorna when she flinches at the word Hydra. We know this. Pietro nods and falls silent. Captain, Wanda switches into English to speak on the comlink. We have found her. Unless there is another who survived and who is invisible to me, we have found her. There is only one, Vision says. 7 subjects, only 1 survivor. I have found where they keep the remaining vials. There is a quiet for a moment, and Wanda can hear the thunk of the captain's shield hitting something very hard. Vision, the captain says. Get the vials, get them in storage on the Quinjet, or get them to Rhodey to store in his suit until we're done here. Maximoffs, he pauses a moment, waits for the twins' da of confirmation. Get her to the Quinjet, have Pietro carry her off. Or, she's scared of Pietro, Wanda says. I think she is scared of most men. I will carry her. Right, the captain says. But make sure she's clear and tell me when you're all on the Quinjet. Da. Wanda carries Lorna how she had carried small children at the orphanage when they were between fosters. Balanced carefully on her hip, Lorna curled into her. One hand half free, she keeps Scarlet tugged close in that hand, ready to strike out. When they're almost halfway out of the base, Pietro sprints off, and she thinks Lorna notices that she is tenser with her brother gone, tucking closer. It will be all right, she murmurs. Tell me, she asks, to keep her mind off wherever Pietro has run to. What can you do? Lorna's hand, small and bony and pale, stretches out, twists, and suddenly a coil of copper and steel is shaping itself into a bracelet around her wrist. Metal, she murmurs. I can control it. Then suddenly Lorna is small again, tucked close to Wanda, even her newly braceleted hand tucked close. I brought a blanket, Pietro says, the blue-silver tracery still in the air beside him. The blanket is orange, bright and ugly, but distinctly warm-looking. He nods towards Lorna. Outside, it is cold, with the robes. Wanda nods. Lorna, she asks. The girl's eyes fix on her face, eyes bright and green. May my brother wrap you in the blanket? It is cold outside. Lorna glances to Pietro, and the image bubbles up in Pietro's mind. Lorna's bright and piercing gaze, much like Wanda's when focused. Slowly, Lorna nods. They reach the Quinjet with no complications, Pietro sprinting away every few meters to knock down a steering guard. Lorna, wrapped in the blanket, baring her feet and face, clings to Wanda like a monkey. Once there, Wanda sits, rocking Lorna gently on her lap, and Pietro darts around, sending a message via the Quinjet's comms. Finding the thermos he knows the captain packed, the medkit he knows is tucked under the gurney, and spare sets of clothes that Vision conscientiously tucked to one side after they all lost parts of their uniforms in an explosion on a training mission. Here, he says, sitting down beside Wanda, offering the thermos of hot soup to Lorna. Soupe. Lorna glances at the thermos, glances to Pietro's face and back to the soup. Wanda can smell it, some mixture of vegetables, chicken, and a strong measure of garlic, delicious and warm. Pietro smiles gently, and it looks almost awkward on him. Him trying to be comforting to someone not one of them. Carefully, he pours out some of the soup into the metal cup cap and offers it again. Lorna glances again. Soup, Pietro, then stretches out her hand, twists, and the cup floats, somewhat wobbly, free of Pietro's hands and into hers. Pietro glances to Wanda. Metal, Wanda says in soft Sokovian. She can control it. Lorna is dozing when the others get back. Still tucked against Wanda, Pietro had caught the thermos cap when it almost fell from her grip, and Lorna had smiled sleepily, twisted her hands, and the bracelet on her wrist separated into steel and copper. The copper half carried by the steel wrapped around Wanda's wrist, before the steel wrapped around Pietro's. In Gishink, she had said, and Wanda translated, a gift. Dakensha, Pietro had said. Wanda had nodded and gently tucked Lorna closer. Dakensha. The others are quiet on their return. Once they spot Lorna dozing in one in Wanda's arms, Pietro is hovering protectively the way he does anytime Wanda is hurt. The others know by now that dealing with Pietro like that is never fun. She's alright? The captain asks as he arrives back, and the twins nod. She is sleeping, Wanda says. Pietro gave her some of your soup. He frowns slightly at Pietro for that, but Pietro shrugs, unabashed. She would have been hungry. The food was terrible when it was us. The med kits? He asks and glances to the pile beside Pietro's seat. And the spare clothes? We were going to check her over, Wanda says. Give her something new to wear. But she fell asleep. We'll alert Dr. Cho, he says and glances at Lorna's face, half tucked against Wanda. Make sure she's all right. They aren't entirely sure who or what he's referring to with that, and settle for nodding. Lorna is, Dr. Cho says, slightly underweight, and in need of a square meal and a good night's rest. And no drugs, she adds. Whatever they put into her system, it's not good for her. Nothing stronger than aspirin for a week. Pietro finds the saucepan of soup the captain had put in the group fridge and reheats a bowl. Makes some toast. Lorna is still dozing, but she wakes up enough to eat it all before falling back to sleep. The others glance between themselves and Wanda, can see them wondering where Lorna should go. She stays with us, Wanda says. She has been through the same as us. She is like family. We will take care of her. They tuck Lorna into Wanda's bed and take it in turns to keep an eye on her as she sleeps. When Lorna wakes screaming, it is Wanda watching. Pietro is awake in a moment. But Wanda is already there, holding Lorna's hand, repeating over and over again, Ich habe sie. Pietro sits beside Wanda, a little further from Lorna, who still glances at him wearily. Then Lorna takes his hand, the one bearing the bracelet she gave him. Wanda's words change. We have you, she says in German. And Pietro finishes what she means to say. You are safe. Sometimes Lorna's nightmares are only screaming ones, and sometimes she does as Pietro has seen Wanda do, lashing out with her gift in great powerful waves. The difference here, of course, is that he can't see what she is doing. We have you, he murmurs, as soon as he's shaken her awake. When she takes to clinging to him like a monkey after nightmares, as she does with Wanda, it becomes I have you, with his hand stroking soothingly down her back, just as he had done for long years with Wanda. Ich habe sie, he promises. Ich habe sie. Sie sind sicher. I have you. You are safe. After the first few nights, they don't sleep in shifts, but Pietro is, as ever, hyper-aware to things that might hurt Wanda and feels the way the air is moving with the metal. One evening, her nightmare wakes both of them holding her hands, letting her cling close as a monkey to them both. Wir haben sie, they repeat over and over, a soothing litany, a quiet reassurance. Wir haben sie, wir haben sie. Du, Lorna says one night, and the twins still glance to each other. Informal, thinks Wanda. Trust, thinks Pietro. Du. Wanda murmurs, nodding, and the twins speak together. Wir haben du. Lorna trusts them, and it is a trust they are careful to never betray. They are careful not to lie to her, to let her know the extent of their powers, which of the others they know can be trusted. Thus far, they count Barton and Vision in that number, without reservation, and the Captain and the Falcon more warily. Rhodes they know is friends with Stark, and Romanoff, Wanda still cannot get a read. When Wanda brings pieces of metal to Lorna for her to practice with, They are left as offerings on the table, where Lorna can see them but does not have to use them. Sometimes Wanda uses them for practice, lifting them up, combining them together as best she can, making them dance in patterns, and Lorna will watch closely. That's what you can do? Lorna asks. You can control metal and minds? Wanda shakes her head. Minds, she says. And I can move objects, create force, or use the red to shield. I do it all through the red. Lorna nods and watches. The first time Lorna does not wake them after a nightmare, it is Pietro who wakes to notice it. He is always hyper-aware of what might hurt Wanda, and he feels the air change as Lorna pads out of bed and sits at the table. He is sitting up, making sure Wanda is safe tucked under her own blankets, when he spots the steel dancing over the wood of the table. Lorna, he realizes, is making it dance, is setting it spinning, making it sing. He pads quietly over the floor, sits down on the other side of the table. Are you alright? He asks. Lorna glances at him, hands still around the spinning, wrapping, warping, singing metal, and nods. I wanted, she starts, and then nods towards the metal. I didn't want to have to hurt anyone. Pietro does not have to ask to understand. He remembers how Strucker had Wanda practice destruction with her wooden blocks. Had her tear minds apart. Wanda has never feared battle, feared destruction, feared doing harm except to Pietro. Lorna, on the other hand, is a child about whom they know so little. They made Wanda her people, he says instead. They told me to use my speed to do the same. They wanted weapons, not people. Lorna nods, mixes the metal into one shape, a bird perched in the open door of a cage, looking outwards. Her eyes are bright and green and focused on his. I don't want to be a weapon. Lorna is, Wanda knows, comfortable around her. She's more likely to venture out into the base if she can stay at Wanda's side. If Wanda will stay close to her in turn, and Wanda, when she has time, is more than willing to help her adjust. Pietro, Wanda knows Lorna is getting used to him. That she doesn't fear him since he gave her soup, and that she is practicing her English with him. It still surprises her to see Pietro chasing after something silvery thrown by Lorna's power. To see Lorna laughing when it is returned, and most of all to see Lorna arrive on day to training, carried in Pietro's arms. She asked if she could watch. He says in Sokovian, I would have preferred piggyback, but she is a monkey. Wanda laughs at that. Our monkey. She says, she is our sister now. Pietro grins. I will tell the captain, he says, and gently ruffles Lorna's green hair as he goes. You are our sister, Pietro says when they walk back with Lorna that day, then frowns. You are a sister to us, Wanda says instead, explaining better. We have all been changed by Hydra, and we are all free of them. We are like family. Lorna watches them. Her eyes, they're bright, yet pale, watchful green. We can be family? She asks in English. You can be, she trails off, siblings, Pietro says, and gently reaches for Lorna's hand, the metal of his bracelet catching the light. We can be siblings. The smile Lorna gives is radiant. End of story.